2, 1, go.
Welcome in to PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. And with me is an old friend of mine who may be a familiar face to some in Baltimore and to some in Sarasota, Florida, because those are the last two places he's lived. His name is Eric Garfield, and we're going to talk to him about the Oriole pitching prospects. Nobody knows this stuff better than Eric Garfield of the Florida Prospects Report, and he'll be our guest tonight. But let me first tell you about, or ask you a question. What company has the expertise and technology to make your home substantially more energy efficient, comfortable, and even virus-free? Well, that would be AJ Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis. Check them out, ajmichaels.com. And with the baseball season in our rearview mirror, you can focus on college football, pro football, and college basketball, with tips off next week. It's all there with Superbook, the most trusted name in Vegas. And now you can use promo code StanCharles23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code StanCharles23. And I said they're the most trusted name in Vegas when it comes to sports books. They are Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And when it comes to knowing something about the Oriole prospects, I never gamble on that. I go to the source. And this is a gentleman that lives in Sarasota, Florida, and has seen all the hot prospects that have come through the system, and he's up to speed on everybody that's still in the minor leagues right now. His name is Eric Garfield. Eric, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Stan. Thank you so much for having me on. I love talking minor league baseball, so I appreciate every opportunity. And thank you for calling me a gentleman.
Well, you are a gentleman. You are a gentleman. And we look forward to getting our viewers up to speed with all of your knowledge. And I thought where we'd start tonight, because this is going to be an ongoing discussion between us and letting our viewers in on this stuff, is everybody knows the prospects that are up right now. You know, Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, Grayson Rodriguez, and DL Hall. And we also know about the offensive prospects that are on their way in Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, and Jackson Holiday. We may not know them intimately, Eric, but we know about them. But
right.
what I wanted to laser focus in on is, do you think the Orioles pitching prospects match in some ways the offensive prospects that we have?
Yeah, and I like how you said that. In some ways they do. Maybe not the high upside of Adley and Gunnar, but very effective athletes that, if maxed out, can be used in the process of getting better and then winning important games / playoff games. So I'm going to say yes to that question.
All right. So let's start with I'm going to throw you out a couple names, okay, of the guys that I know that might figure in next year. And you tell me whether you think they will make appearances with the club at the big club next year, and whether you think they'll be starters or relief pitchers. And I start with the guy the Orioles picked up, the two guys that we picked up in the Trey Mancini deal, and that is Seth Johnson, the pitcher that the Rays had at that time, who was about to go under Tommy John surgery, and a fireballing right-hander that the Astros had named Chase, ChaYse McDermott, and Cade Povich, the star of the Jorge Lopez trade. Do all three of those pitchers factor in at some point next season?
I'm going to say for different reasons and maybe to fill different roles, but you're going to go 3 for 3 with yeses with those three. And I would say those are the three that represent the most upside in the high minors part of the organization. So yeah, yes to all three.
Now, I'm assuming Seth Johnson, while I'm sure he'll come to spring training, the fact that he hasn't pitched in at least 18 or 20 months or something like that, missed all of last season and missed a good chunk of the 22 season before he had the Tommy John surgery. Is he somebody that would be like sort of like the John Means of next year, where you're waiting for him to come in maybe at the second half of the season?
Yes, like I said, different factors for everybody, different schedules, and yeah, I think that's very reasonable for him. He was able to contribute. He started his track last year in the rookie leagues, kind of late in the Gulf Coast season, so he did get some innings under his belt. And I talked to him, and I talked to his agent after a couple of his performances, and everybody from this side of the table was very satisfied with his results and his metrics. The agent wrote to me overjoyed. There was one start where he didn't throw a fastball below 96.5 miles an hour. So 14 months post procedure with Tommy John, that's an excellent threshold for him to be at. So yeah, I don't know as far as stuff, command, and pitch to pitch results, but with his foundation already established, him being on the Orioles and having a role, maybe a bullpen role late in the 2024 season is extremely reasonable, and I think probable.
He will pitch most likely, and we keep our fingers crossed, at Norfolk to start the year next year, correct? If there are no setbacks?
I would expect so. They've kept his track so specific. I remember last year during the spring training / exhibition season, I saw him doing pitchers fielding practice drills, but it was almost like a quarterback with a red jersey. That was it. He wasn't allowed to wind up. He wasn't allowed to really thrust into throws until months later when he debuted with the rookie league. So his track is very, very specifically kept to. That tells me that they value his abilities when everything is going right.
Now, how about the other trade, the acquisition in the Mancini deal, Chase McDermott? He's got a high-end arm, velocity-wise. There were concerns a little bit whether he could command it, keep his walks down, and whether or not we'd see him as a relief pitcher option or a starting pitcher option. And you told me you have some interesting perspectives on that, I think.
I do. I got to watch all of his starts in that exhibition season, and that includes some guys that are on the other side of the major league line. So this is where kind of prospects are pitching against big leaguers. And what he showed me was a lot of endurance. This is March, or late February in Florida. It's hot. This guy is a big athlete. Sitting down in the dugout and getting up multiple times was no worse for the wear any times. And I'm sitting there with the photographers. That's exactly what we're looking for. Any sign of fatigue, any sign of that stuff wearing down. And McDermott shows a great deal of endurance when you're kind of looking for him that way. So maybe a little bit more of an athlete than most pitchers. To me, that's an indicator. Again, my decision means really nothing as far as where they end up. But to me, that shows maybe a bit more of a starter than people realize. Then you look at his stuff, his results. He's got a great strikeout rate. He actually pitched in AA and AAA, and as the competition got better, his strikeout rate increased. His walk rate mildly decreased. So again, these are signs that the maturity in competition didn't really affect him adversely. These are good signs for the overall pitching picture for the organization.
Now, when you use the word endurance, do you mean the same thing as if he's throwing 95 or 96 in the second inning? We might see him keep that velocity into the fifth and sixth inning?
That's exactly what I mean. I was going to say, this is not like a 9-out pitcher. This is a 15+ out pitcher. And the only reason I think that is because he showed it to me start after start. Pretty impressive. Okay. Good trade get for Trey Mancini.
Yeah. Cade Povich, it's interesting that the start of that deal up to this point has been Yenier Cano, who was kind of considered a throw-in at the time the deal was made for Jorge Lopez. But Cade Povich is the guy the Orioles want. And Eric, I'm told that the Orioles were in on when they ended up acquiring Flaherty, they were in on Jordan Montgomery, but the Cardinals in that trade were asking for Cade Povich for 2 months of Montgomery before he becomes a pretty expensive free agent. You like the idea that they held on to Jordan Montgomery? I mean, to Cade Povich?
You're just dropping this on me now, and I guess I really don't have much choice. But I can say, I guess the best way to answer that, I do like Cade Povich. I really like his strikeout potential, and I especially like his left-handedness. I guess Montgomery would have brought that back, but I'd rather
But you would have then had to compete with 8 or 9 other teams.
Okay, fair.
At the 20 million level for him.
So I guess the prospect hugger in me would rather have the Povich that you might be able to turn into something. I really think, even though his numbers kind of, as he got to AAA, reflected a little bit more difficult of an adjustment from double to triple, I'm not going to just look past the rest of his development and where he came from with Minnesota. He's always been a 10K per 9 guy with me, and I think he's going to maintain that. It might not be as a starter, but he's not as, he's not as big as Armbruster or Garrett Stallings or Houston Raw. So maybe he'll be a lefty specialist striking everybody out. But again, that would not be a bad get back for Jorge Lopez plus Cano in that deal.
All right. I'm guessing that our viewers that are interested in Oriole prospects, and obviously for the last couple of years and the next few years, there's going to be intense interest in Oriole prospects and how they develop the organization without the benefit of very high draft picks, hopefully, because that means you're succeeding in season. But I'm assuming that a lot of people, Oriole fans, know those 3 names.
Yep.
I've got to do a commercial now for the Costas Inn. When we get back, I want to talk about a bunch of guys from the age of 22 to about 26 that you think have a chance to still produce for the Orioles in different roles. And we'll do that in just a minute. We're talking with Eric Garfield of Florida Prospects Report on Press Box Live tonight. I've got to tell you about the Costas Inn. I've known these folks at the Costas Inn since the mid-90s when I was doing a radio program on WCBM, and Eric was probably about 19 back then, or 16 back then, and listened to me. But I've known these people, this family, that long. The restaurant is consistently excellent. It's got a great variety in the menu. They're not just the crab house or the crab cake house, although they also have great crab soup. But they've got nightly specials. If you're still uncomfortable eating out at restaurants, you can order online at CostasInn.com. You can pay for your food online, and when you pick it up, you can tell them you're there, and they'll bring it out and put it in your car. It's always bagged immaculately. You're not going to have your grandmother's crab soup pouring over your ribs. But they've got all kinds of specials there, whether it's meat, chicken, poultry, fish. Poultry is chicken. Meat, fish, poultry, and all the great fish dishes there too. Great salads. The Costas Inn. It's a great, great place. And again, if you are planning to do crabs, call them at 410-477-1975 to talk to them about sizes, costs, and availability. That's Costas Inn. 410-477-1975. Back with our time with Eric Garfield. And Eric, I always like to let people know how we got to know each other, because I think it makes it more personal and up close and personal. Eric moved to Sarasota and opened up a snowball stand at Ed Smith Stadium, like I'm guessing 9 or 10 years ago.
It was 2015, so 8 years ago.
8 years ago, and you ran
Yep.
that and created sort of a more than a niche business
Yep,
at
a lot
Ed
of fun.
Smith Stadium. You had the whole thing going on. You had a hard location. What's it called? A brick and mortar location, and you did
Yep.
all kinds of catering in the snowball business. And tell our listeners out there or viewers what happened to that business.
It was, first of all, it was probably the most fun thing I've ever done in my life. I'm not a business person, so I kind of just put it together with my family. We had trucks, we had a store, we had a stand. So the business, I don't want to say it was thriving, but I would have been able to do it forever. I'm an exerciser all the time, so I'm a big bicyclist, and I got into a bicycle accident in 2019, right before COVID. And because of the condition that it left me in, I had to sell the business. I sold the trucks. I sold the equipment. I found a family from Baltimore. They live here. So we're in touch all the time. They're actually doing great. But really, you and I met each other way, way, way before then. I called you in 1988, one time after an Orioles game, and I was very, very mad that the Orioles did not trade for Ruben Sierra from the Texas Rangers, and you tried to like talk 9-year-old Eric down, and I think you were, you were very, very generous with your time, but we've known each
All right.
other for a long time.
All right. Well, and now you've sort of, it's funny how life works, and it hasn't paid off directly yet, but you've pivoted and you've become a real expert in knowing the Oriole prospects because you're an Oriole lover, you're a baseball lover, and now you're down there up close
Yep.
with these guys, and you get to know a lot of them personally, don't you?
A very, very high percentage of them. I'm at their practices, I'm at their drills, I'm at their draft camps, and nobody else is. I get to meet their families. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's coincided with the time that the Orioles minor league system
It's
is full of
taking off.
exciting
Yeah.
talent. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys are great. The rookie league guys that we'll never even get a chance to talk to. Some of these guys are going to play Major League Baseball. So it has not been like that for the majority of my fandom.
Yeah. Two quick questions before we dig back into the pitchers specifically. You have I'm not saying you're buddies with him, but you know Matt Blood. He just got a promotion in the organization. We know Elias is the mind behind this, and Sig
Yep.
Meidel helps in the draft. But do you understand what the director of player development does on a day-to-day basis when players are there?
Very well. There's days that I have no affiliation with the organization. I'm not an intern. I'm not. I'm closest to a groupie. But there's
Right.
days that his time on the bleachers is spent next to me for hours at a time. We talk about players. We talk about the program. We talk about amateur baseball, where he came from. So yeah, I know Matt really well, and there's a lot of people that were like, "Oh, you're not going to see him anymore. He's not going to come down." And
He's going to be he'll be hands on. Yeah.
right. He's the kind of guy that needs to be at the bleachers, behind the backstop, sometimes even holding the gun. So Matt, and hey, really, he's had this title for a long time.
Yep.
I think that the change in title really means a little bit more salary for him,
Yep.
and he's done a great job. So he's very, very, very deserving of the bump up in salary. Good for him.
Now, a more interesting situation developed in the pitching coach category because we're talking pitching tonight. I've loved the end result of what Chris Holt does with pitchers at the major league level. Yep. I don't know everything behind this, but it's interesting. If they had some kind of problem with Chris Holt, then I think they would have fired Chris Holt, not kept him as the pitching coach of the organization, director of pitching. Could you talk a little bit about that? And maybe they felt that that's where they needed him now, and maybe 2 years down the road, he could be back as pitching coach of the Orioles. But maybe these guys we're talking about, he's the guy they need to polish them to get them ready to be big league performers.
I think that's a big part of it. And another part of it is his specialty is designing these tracks for each individual. And to not have him doing that would mean the organization would be a little bit behind. So I don't know if I like you, even though I studied this like a college student, I don't know how much I know about what's happening behind the scenes with the pitching, even when I talk to the players. But it is working. We're getting good results, and some decent prospects are hitting their upside. So even though I don't know Chris Holt to give him that much credit, he's a big decision maker with how this methodical plan is working. Some of the guys we're talking about right now, they traded for in 2020.
Yep.
Some they traded for in 2022. So they're all in a population that's being developed together. We have to think there's some plan to that. It's not just, come down to Sarasota and start throwing.
So let's dig in. I'm not going to ask you the names. I'll know most of the names you're going to tell me about. I know, for example, Gene Pinto, Garrett Stallings in the on the Iglesias trade.
Yep.
I know that in addition to Kyle Bradish, we got Zach Peak, we got Ryan Brinovich, and I think it was Isaac Matson for Dylan Bundy. So give me a 5 or 6 or 7 names that you think we should really have our eyes on, that 23 could be a pivotal year for.
Well, I guess I would say it depends on what the Orioles are going to use as their big measuring stick. Is it minor league results and stats, or is it metrics? If it's minor league results and stats, some of the guys that you mentioned last year were the starting rotation that led Norfolk to the AAA championship.
Right.
That would be Garrett Stallings, a dependable innings eater, not a high strikeout rate, definitely pitches to contact, but has more than manageable ground ball, fly ball ratios. So if the Orioles are not thinking metrics, this might be I know it's kind of a stretch. This might be the minor league veteran type that could make the big club out of spring. If not, if they want to look at metrics, if they want to look at whose ball moves a little bit more, whose MPH is a little bit higher, they might look at Justin Armbruster, the big righty, another guy who moved from double to AAA and had better stats.
He was drafted by Armbruster was drafted by the team, correct?
I believe he was a 13th round pick. Okay. So I want to say by the Orioles, but even more a late round pick who's flourished in this pitching program that we're talking about. So those are the two really usable, not flashy guys. I have an affinity for Pinto, the guy you mentioned before. He's a guy that I've interacted with and communicated with over the years. He kind of pitches backwards because his fastball isn't elite. I kind of think his slider is truly elite. So if he's not a starter, he's closer to 5'9", 175, 180, a little more round than thick. But he's got that pitcher's endurance, and he's got that slider, and it moves. He can use it to both hands. So I guarantee you the organization's book on Pinto is well established, and some decisions for his later track have been determined. Peak, that's a guy who some of the questions as of right now are not answered. He's older than I thought when we discussed. He's actually 25. So is he at his upside, or is there still more to get out of his profile? To answer that question, he's in the fall league right now, and he's doing pretty well.
There's a pitcher that I remember that he was a guy that the Orioles it was, I think, the year that they drafted Kerstedt, so they saved money on Kerstedt, and as a number 1 pick, and one of the guys they paid over slot was Cody Baumler. Out of Carter Baumler, out of I think Illinois or
Iowa, close.
Iowa. I knew it was the Midwest.
And with an eye.
They were real high on him, but he
Yep.
needed Tommy John surgery, and he's on his way back. What do you know about him?
Oof, a lot. Carter might have the most pitching skill / upside in the organization, and I bet if you talk to some team officials, they tell you that with a straight face.
Yep.
This is a guy. This is an athlete who is a pitcher. He played quarterback. He played basketball, not for his high school team, but this is a guy with a gorgeous delivery. It's kind of weird that he hurt his shoulder because he is a very strong lower body guy and his delivery is silky smooth. So hopefully he's past that physical part of his development and can focus on what happens when the ball leaves his hands. He has every pitch, every type of movement. He doesn't utilize off speed, but he's a great enough athlete to deaden the ball with his palm. So I would expect, if everything goes right, and he is a guy that they've been very careful with. So they value him. I would expect this is the year that the gloves kind of come off. He has more than 25 appearances as a starter, more than 4 innings a pop. And we really see he's a low whip, high K guy.
Do you think he develops in 24 to be in line to maybe make the team in 25? He's 22 years old right now.
He's okay. He's one of the guys that was younger than I thought. So I guess in terms of talent and athleticism, absolutely. I think his breakout could be very large. This is not an average pitcher. People online that aren't familiar with his development or his amateur career say he has 4, back end starter potential. I see him as a 1 or a 2, and it's based on stuff. So yeah,
okay.
Expect Carter Baumler to have a very good year this season.
Interesting. Listen, our time is just about up tonight, but I want to ask you, one of the things in the Mike Elias era has been, and it hasn't produced a thing yet, is the foreign players, the Latin American experiment that they've finally tried to catch up with Kobe Perez leading the way.
Mm-hmm.
I know I don't know any names out of that pitching wise, but is it the type of thing when Gunnar and Rutschman and Kauser and Kerstad are all booming away and we're going, well, how are they going to get the pitching, that all of a sudden in 25 and 26 that there's a pitcher or two that they paid like $50,000-$75,000 for, that all of a sudden we're saying, hey, this guy's at Double-A, he's amazing, and he's 19 or 20.
Righty, Edgar Portes. Lefty, Davy Cruz. As we go on and do this together, I'll enlighten you a little bit more, but those are the high teen upside starter types. And yeah, I'm hoping that the class that they bought last January, there will be 1 or 2, but I have to see them. They'll have to pitch in camps and in the rookie league first. So probably not as overwhelmingly planned as what they took from amateur United States baseball in college. But yeah, there's a couple names. And again, it used to be a wasteland. It used to be zero. So any names in this discussion at all is positive movement.
But you would say in 5 or 6 years, those 2 names could be 5 or 6 names that are possibilities.
Okay. If there's not attrition as far as the front office and people like Holt, I would expect that 2 to be 7. And then, then the system is thriving. Then, plans are starting to be met and we're starting to get results as far as winning percentage and postseason.
Last question I got for you. We kept it. We did a good job confining it to the pitching prospects. But when I asked about international players, there's a catcher, Sammy.
Yes, there
How do you pronounce his last name? Sammy Basayo. Basayo. Now I know this year he started at down at the Eastern Shore, Delmarva, and I think he made his way up to Aberdeen. Tell us a little bit about Sammy Basayo.
Well, Man, he is an outstanding baseball player. He's very big for a young person. The physical frame that I compare him to is a name from the 80s and 90s. He's built like Mark Parent, a very, very tall guy. But he can squat and he can get out of the squat as a catcher. His best skill is popping up and throwing. He's a lefty catcher, or he's a righty thrower, a lefty hitter with outstanding hand-eye coordination and a soft swing like a batting title type guy. So I don't know if he's going to stay at catcher or if they're going to stick him at first base where he's much more than adequate. They trust him, but he's an outstanding player. He's gone from international prospect who's barely known to top 100 prospect. Now he's a top 25 prospect. When all the graduations happen this year, Jackson and Kobe and all them, he'll be the Orioles' #1 prospect, and he'll be an outstanding big league player.
He is already in the top 25 in the baseball prospects.
Yeah, and for people like me, I've seen this guy 100 times. I've
Yeah.
got footage. I've got everything. He's an outstanding baseball player. Not just for someone that's 19, but a great baseball athlete who's been taught the right way.
All right. I'll look forward to talking to you. We want to thank our sponsors tonight, and they have included AJ Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis at ajmichaels.com. Superbook Sports with their special offer right now. If you sign in and use promo code sign up at Superbook Sports, use the promo code StanCharles23, or if you're a Glenn Clark fan, use Glenn Clark 23. But you get a $250 first bet match, win or lose. They'll match your first bet up to $250 with promo code StanCharles23. And of course, our old reliable, the Costas Inn, they keep us afloat doing these remotes, Zooms. Eric Garfield has been my guest. I promise in 2 or 3 weeks we'll have him back on again, and then we'll dig into some other prospects, more of the hitting prospects in this organization. Eric, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Go O's.
Go O's. Bye.